Welcome.
Welcome. Willkommen, bienvenue, welcome.
Irie, we talking about the Jamaican in trading places.
What? No, that was
welcome, Irie, to, but that's not important right now.
God. Oh, God.
That is my best Jamaican accent of all time.
That is the loudest Jamaican accent I have ever heard in my life.
Happy New Year! Jarrod and I were just talking about race swapping in movies. So
yes, role reversals in terms of yeah, because it's a very sensitive topic, and it can be. No, there's certain things that you could have done back in the 70s and 80s that you can't do now because everybody is so sensitive, and everybody's so.
Do some of that in the 80s, Jarrod. I mean, it was still.
Well, no, true.
For example, the other one that I remember was Richard Pryor and the Toy.
Are you sure you're not talking about? Are you sure you're not referring to Silver Streak? Because Gene Wilder in Silver Streak.
No,
really?
In the Toy, this rich guy.
I've never seen the Toy. Played by Jackie Gleason.
Oh my God, it's funny and it's really good. But the guy goes into the toy store and the son goes, "I want that black man," and they said, "Okay," and they bought him.
Oh shit!
It was Richard Pryor, and Richard Pryor like, "Well, whatever, dude. I mean, I gotta get paid for this." And it turned out that the son really wanted a playmate, but the way it was set up as like, I just bought myself a black.
Well, that could be perceived. That could be perceived as a larger commentary in terms of how Black folks are still perceived. I mean, as it would perceive back in that particular time, that we are still, and I include myself in this because obviously I'm Black. So we include, people they see us as this sort
red,
of.
Jarrod, you're a red guy. You're red.
In Trinidad, I may be considered that. In the United States, in Canada, in Britain, I'm considered Black, and I'm very comfortable with that. So let's go with that.
Not going to use the N-word.
What? Numbskull.
You're red. You're red.
No, but you remember what Nobel laureate Derek Walcott said, right? Derek Walcott, who had he was born in St. Lucia, but most of his work centered on life in Trinidad and Tobago. Mm-hmm. And he did say, and I think it was the Schooner's Delight. I'm trying to remember the exact name of the poem, but he did say that I am a red blank who loves the sea, and I have Dutch and N-word in me, and he goes on to mention the other ethnicities that he has. He says either I'm nobody or I'm a nation, and I identified with that because I too am a red who loves the sea because I grew up, near the ocean in Trinidad. So yeah, I know all about that. I know all about that kind of vibe. and search for identity and what have you. But that's not important right now.
That's not important.
So anyway, yeah.
But for those of you joining us, we are two madmen.
Oh God knows, huh?
Good. Two madmen. we worked in what is generally regarded as a what they call it, Madison Avenue of Trinidad and Tobago, where a lot of the ad agencies were kind of around in the same area. That's kind of Woodbrook, St. Clair.
Pretty much in St. Clair, in the St. Clair area, St. Clair was considered.
Wasn't always like that, dude. They were all in Port of Spain.
They were all in Port of Spain. I remember that.
And our first episode, we talked about Heady Days by Patrick Johnstone. Patrick Johnstone describes where he went to work first was on the stretch. There's a lot of ad agencies, quote unquote, on the stretch. It's not Charlotte Street. Was it Charlotte Street, you said?
It was Charlotte Street, actually.
Yeah. You know,
Charlotte Street back in the yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of the ad agencies started up around there. McCann was at Abercrombie Street, but they were even lower down in the beginning. Before they became McCann, they were part of it. So everybody was a lot closer to the media houses because the Guardian always had its office in the same place. And then the Express opened up on Independence Square. I think they had opened up on. So they were always very close to the media because they had to be. They had to, and then the radio stations, Radio 610.
Oh yeah.
Radio stations everything was in Port of Spain.
Everything was in Port of Spain. With the exception of Radio Trinidad, they were in Marval Road. TET was on Marval Road. So you had to go there.
I think the exception was Lonsdale, Saatchi and Saatchi. I'm not too sure where they started, but they ended up on Herbert Street. I think it's Herbert Street in
Herbert Street in St. Clair, yeah. I think they're still there, if memory serves me right.
No, they're not. No, I don't think they're still there.
No, they're not. They've moved? They've since relocated? Really?
Yeah, they had moved to Alcazar Street. They had a huge building in Alcazar Street, and I think they moved from there.
I remember that. Yeah, exactly. You're right.
And now McCann had a big building in St. Clair, and now they are around the Savannah, which is actually interesting because everybody seems to be going back. Well, that's not true because Collier Morrison Belgrave, which used to be Christensen Belgrave. Christensen Belgrave used to be on Alexandra Street. Not Alexandra Street.
They used to be
by the Oval, where the British High Commission is. That street.
And now I think it's no longer Christensen Belgrave, but it's Collier Morrison and Belgrave.
It's Collier Morrison Belgrave. They're now in Chaguanas.
In Chaguanas.
Mm-hmm. And so they were on Alcazar Street at one point as well.
Yes, that's true.
McCann has moved closer to the action, quote unquote. They're around the Savannah. Lonsdale, I'm not too sure where they are. CMB, well, they're out of Port of Spain entirely. And a lot of, Publicis is still in what's the name of the
Would that be Dundonald Street, though?
Dundonald Street. They're on Dundonald Street.
Dundonald Street, there we are.
So, which is right near where McCann is, kind of basically in the same area. And then there is the Buzz. The Buzz is in.
I think they're located on David-Tile Street in Woodbrook.
David-Tile Street in by the Avenue, on the Avenue.
By the Avenue, yeah.
Yeah, So
I would have thought. Yeah, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
No, I would have thought that the agencies, most of the agencies, would have wanted to christen Woodbrook as a spiritual home because when you really think about it, there's a lot happening in that particular neck of the woods. There's a lot happening in Woodbrook.
A lot of creativity has come out of Woodbrook, that area.
This is true.
Because there are people who worked out of their homes doing carnival-related stuff, doing, a lot of creative people have come from Woodbrook. It is consider Woodbrook like the bohemian, area, apart from Belmont. Belmont was part, that kind of,
right
in the head of the things. But Woodbrook had this kind of gentrified, kind of suburban kind of feel. So you had a lot of
Exactly.
what they call intelligence people who
The
went to the
intelligentsia, the
secondary schools
intelligentsia,
there.
the
Then
so-called
they went to the
cognoscenti, if you will.
right. So they went to the
Right.
Fatimas. They went to the
St.
what they call it,
Mary's, they went to
St. Mary's.
QRC and so on.
Yeah, but they went to schools within that era, QRC. Yeah. So, excuse me, a lot of them, grew up around this place, and they congregated. And I think this bar that used to be on the corner of R. Peter, no, yes, R. Peter and French Street. What was it called? Mass Camp Pub.
Mass Camp Pub.
Used to be
Wow.
a big hotbed of creative.
There was a lot.
Yeah,
There was a lot of things happening. Amazing things
you had
happening.
a lot of stand-up comedians who used to do this stuff out
Right.
there. A lot of calypsonians, a lot of mass camps started up around there. So yeah, I mean, when I worked at the Edge Advertising, they used to be on French Street, which is when I saw Jarrod sitting down in the front, and it was literally a house. It was a house. And now I have a story about that. So I'll just before I tell that story, I was told by the office manager at the time. She says, Jarrod Butts is in our foyer talking to himself. I'm like, Jarrod is here? Cool. And I run outside and I see Jarrod talking to himself sitting in the porch, because literally the reception area was a porch of somebody's house. Now, Edge had rented the bottom of somebody's house. And the bottom of this house is one of these old, really big, old French Creole type buildings, in Woodbrook. I don't know who originally owned it. I wish I knew. But I remember it was green and white. And when I started working there, the office manager, she said, there's a woman who lives upstairs and she's mad. I'm like, oh, okay. Now I'm new, so I don't know, I have no opinion on this. And she says, because one day when we first moved in here about a month later, and we were now getting settled in, water started streaming down the side of the wall in the creative department. She's like, right there where you're sitting in that wall that you're facing, water started streaming down, and we didn't know what it was until the water turned brown and started to smell. So we had to evacuate. And she said it turned out that the daughter of the person, she said her mother, she had dementia. She took a shit in the sink.
Oh dear God!
And turned on the sink and didn't know why it was flushing, and she left it and she went in her room, and that was what was cascading down the wall.
Oh my God, that is
so that story. I'm like, I know. I'm listening to this story in abject horror. I'm listening to the story in horror. And she said, well, she no longer lives there. They put her in a home or whatever. But she was the matriarch of the family that owned the house or whatever. It was a big house. Anyway, that house is no longer there. That they leveled the place. And it's just a big empty lot now. So it was kind of sad,
Yeah.
But Edge had opened up a bookstore next door because, like I said, we had half of the building downstairs, and they opened up a bookstore on the other side. And I didn't know why, but it was cool with me because on my break time, I just used to go next door and hang out with the girl who was selling books, and she was rather cute, a nice girl. And we used to have great conversations, and it was fun. We had a fun time, Working for Edge wasn't all that great in the end, but you have these memories and these stories that stay with you, But yeah, I mean that when you even when I was in England and I was working internship with a design company. They were in a building with a bunch of other people, and in those days, to transfer large data files, you needed to have what is called a T1 connection. Now, anybody who's listening to us who knows what that is, kudos to you. But essentially, what a T1 connection is a pipe, like a phone line that's dedicated to transferring data. And this is like in the early days of the internet. You didn't have like fast, ultra fast connections on the internet. so you couldn't send large files easily. But this T1 connection was a special kind of connection set up by the phone company to transfer large amounts of data. And this company downstairs from where I work, they're the only ones who had it. And one day I was tasked with carrying one of the discs or whatever downstairs to this company. And the company was, I can't remember the name of the company, but I went to this room, and these guys are sitting down in this room with no furniture, and they have two computers, and they're just two young guys. I'm like, well, I'm looking for such and such company, and they're like, well, this is State. I'm like, is that the name of the company, or what you're doing now, or part of another country? What does that mean? And they're looking at me like I'm green, and I'm like, well, I'm looking for this company. And the guy said, yeah, but this is State. I'm like, yeah, but okay, so your State, where's this company? And they're like, well, we are not that company. I'm like, all right. So I went across the way to the other company and knocked on the door. Nobody answered. So I went back up and I told the creative director, I said, well, it doesn't seem to be anybody there. But I found myself at State. And he laughed and he said, those guys are weird. They're crazy. Much later, I bought a book about design, I think years later. And I was flipping through this book, and I lost the book since then. And I can't remember the name of the book. And I was flipping through the book, and I see a picture of the building, of the room that these guys are in. And there was a little write-up about State. And they were a game company that were working on Tomb Raider, Lara Croft Tomb Raider. I'm like, holy shit, I was in the same room with the guys who were developing Lara Croft. And they were just like these unassuming guys. I don't know where they were just two guys sitting in an empty room. It's just like huge empty room.
That's how it starts. That's how it starts, man.
It's funny. It's interesting. I really need to find that book again and get a copy of it if I can.
Yeah.
But, they were just like, they were weird. It was like they didn't have any conversational skills whatsoever. But that's great.
But that's just it. They weren't exactly brilliant conversationalists, but they knew how to start something like Lara Croft Tomb Raider.
At least I think it was Lara Croft. Yeah.
Just as how Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, two unassuming guys, seemingly unassuming guys, started Apple in a garage in San Cupertino in California. So that's just part of the course when it comes to people who are creative. We're odd ducks, I mean, but you know that. You already know that.
Yeah.
We have to be. We can't work in a field like advertising and not be normal. We have to have some degree of madness that thrives within each of us, especially as it relates to advertising. Well, I'm no longer in advertising. I'm hosting a radio show, because that's how I started, as you know. And I'm back doing the morning show on Platinum Hits 103.5 FM. That is pretty much what I do now. If I were to be given, I was once asked, would I ever go back into advertising? And I said, are you kidding me? Because simple truth is, one, advertising, as I keep saying, is a young man's game, a young woman's game. It's for the young. And they're the ones who are supposed to come up with the fresh ideas. They're the ones who are supposed to come up with the new insights that we old folks, we old fogies, we're kind of bereft on that now. But then, as I keep saying, as I keep going back to what I'm listening to now, especially as it relates to radio ads, and maybe even TV ads, because I can't recall the last time I saw a decent TV ad, a local TV ad. These youngsters, I don't know where their heads are at. I don't know what they're thinking. I don't know if it's because, I'd hate to think it's because they are ready to kowtow to what the client wants, and that they're not ready to fight for their ideas and their concepts. They're just saying, look, let's just give the client what they want, and let's just leave it at that. And which is a pity. And
Yeah.
we always have to talk about that. But
Yeah.
and we ask, is there going to be a future? Is there going to be a future in advertising? Is there going to be anything like that? Are we ever going to come up with an unconventional method to come up with ideas and concepts like we did back? I can remember a time when there was this guy. He was struggling financially. Very talented guy, but like I said, struggling. And he could not do, or at least he thought he couldn't get to do the things that he wanted to do. And then he's well, I can say that now he's a professional comedian. And back in the 90s and in 2000s, he was just making some mad money with his concerts. And he was doing very well for himself. But the thing about it is he was also in advertising. And I think he was working at a particular agency and they wanted him to come up with a particular idea for a particular product.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I'm willing to do it, but I have conditions. Mm-hmm. So they asked him, well, what are these conditions? And he said, my condition is this. I want to work outside. I don't want to work in a stuffy office environment. I don't want to work where there are people around me. You put me under that mango tree there, give me a desk, give me a chair, and I'll give you the ideas you're looking for.
Yeah.
And then they said, well, okay. I mean, if that's what you want, that's what I want. They gave him that. And from what I understand, he spent a good bit of time there and he would come up with ideas and he was comfortable with it. And people would walk up to him and ask him, well, what do you think about this? Or what do you think about that? Do you think do you think we should go in this particular direction? Do you think this is how we should structure this particular print ad or something like that? Because his skills were coming up with ideas and writing down these ideas. That was his skill. So I guess that was that's what a creative group head does. I don't know, but that's what he did. That's what he did. And he was very content with it. Very content. Of course, if it started to rain, he'd have to go in the building because he had to be practical. But that's what he used to do. Yeah. And when they asked him why would you want to be outside? Because I want to be out here is where I'm at my best. I cannot function in an office environment. Yeah. Which brings to mind this whole working from home concept. Mm-hmm. We are seeing it replayed in real time. What happens when people have to get up physically to go from point A to point B? Sometimes they have to travel close to 20, 30, sometimes 50 miles, especially if you're living in San Fernando and you have to go up north to Port of Spain. If you're living in Port of Spain, you have to go down south to San Fernando. Whatever it is tough. Yeah. It's tough. Yeah. And even more so if you are a creative individual, because if you're stuck in a car, in a sardine can of a car for like about 45 to an hour in traffic, that is just so deleterious to the entire creative process. And something has got to be done about that, because it's nothing short of disastrous. But I think it would be great, if we could get back to that. And I think if you really do value your employees and you're working in the creative industry and you value employees that much, you would say, hey, guys, listen, I think we need to really rethink how we do this. Instead of saying, okay, we're going to do A, let's do B, maybe even C or D, and see where that takes us. If we make a mistake, we make a mistake. We take our licks, we say, all right, we screwed up, but it seemed like a good idea at the time, but let's try something else, because the old methods are not going to work this time around.
Well, the thing is, there are a number of factors that are probably going to push more into the work for home thing. I don't think I don't think it's going to be forever that they're going to be like, no, we're never going to do this work from home again. Yeah. Now, first of all, let me bookend this by saying we're never going to have lockdowns like we did before for the pandemic. That's just never going to happen. And I'm
No.
saying there will be, we're still in a pandemic situation, but we have reached a stage where it's like, you know what? Every man for himself. If you do not want to do what's necessary to protect yourself, the government can't do it for you. You know, so we're not going to be responsible for what happens to you if you don't do what's necessary. But apart from that, I think a lot of a lot of very, very, very subtle pushback is going to start happening. And it's going to take some time, and people are going to, move to this work from home thing in time. Now, what else is going to happen is well, just so that you know, we well, first of all, Jarrod and I were supposed to do a in-person session today where we showed our ugly faces,
Yeah.
and we're in yellow alert, what we call yellow alert, because we have a lot of rain. It's been raining constantly. It's like Indian monsoon here. It's been raining constantly since midnight of last night. So we decided, you know what, just so nobody gets stuck, but the transportation system to get from A to B in this country is so piss poor on a good day. Doing it with extraneous things like rain is near impossible. But apart from that, the price of gas went up. Was it last week with the budget?
Last week with the budget, yeah.
Yeah. So the thing is that a lot of people um, would be forced to sell their cars. They're just going to say, you know what, I can't afford this. I can't afford to keep this car going. I just can't afford it. So in a matter of time, you're going to see a lot less cars on the road, and there's probably going to be a situation where there'll be a lot less traffic. That doesn't mean that's going to happen next year. That's not going to happen in 5 years. But at the rate that things are going, wouldn't be surprised if within the next 5, 10, 20 years, work from home becomes the norm, because it just makes no sense traveling to get where you're going. I don't see the government ever in making the public transportation system safer and better than it is now. I just don't see it. I don't see that happening. But you could tell me that I'm wrong, that I'm talking absolute rubbish. But what do you think?
Look, it won't be the first time. It won't be the first time that we would say that the government is never going to do this, or will never be implemented, or that's never going to happen. We can say that because the way we have endured, especially in terms of the inaction from administration after administration, and we also know as well that if we're being honest,
Yeah.
we've been an independent country for 60 years,
Yeah.
and for most of those 60 years, there's been one particular administration that's been in charge.
Yeah.
And you could argue, well, there have been other administrations, yes, but we're talking about the administration that has spent the vast majority of time that they had the ability and they had the opportunity to make a difference, and
Yeah.
they've never done that. They've
Yeah.
never looked at our, and said, well, here's how we can make this better. Here's how we can do that. Here's how we can do this. We have people in officialdom who are so tone deaf and so out of touch to
Yeah.
people's needs. I remember there was.
They really broke the record this time, It
Oh
was
no, they have.
they broke the record this time. The three comments, one after the other. We just like, what are you all trying to do? Outdo each other in the stupidest comment ever, you know? Which also
And
makes you realize there are not a lot of PR people working or in a situation of, oh, okay, so I've been binge watching The Crown, and it's very, very good. And the one thing that British monarchy has is the support staff who make sure what the Queen says, what the Prince says, or whatever. what they say is in line with what's in, not just what's in good taste and what makes sense, but what's constitutional. The Queen cannot go and say, I endorse this government's policy. That would be unconstitutional. They would cause a constitutional crisis, you know? So you can't afford to open your mouth and just say, everybody buy coal pots. You know, you can't. But we don't have that. We don't have that.
Correct.
We don't have that.
But it can be argued. It can be argued if you look at what's going on in the UK right now with the Prime Minister, that they came up with some sort of a mini budget, and the intricacies behind that particular budget is everything has just gone so haphazard and so haywire. You have, again, there's that word. You have those within the inner circle of the Conservative Party looking at the Prime Minister and asking her, "What the hell is this woman doing? She doesn't know what that. She's way out of her depth." And there's talk that they may have to go back to the polls and just have to do a redo because they don't know what the hell it is they're doing. Now, could we ascribe that to poor PR? Yeah, we could.
Well, yeah. But we could. But I mean, as it relates to advertising, and PR kind of has a.
There are similarities. It's not necessarily.
There's an overlap. There's an overlap.
Yeah.
I remember when, oh God, what was it? 2002, 2003. I can't remember the year. There was a big brouhaha with Erin Farms. Erin Farms, for those who don't know, make processed meat.
Well, that was in 2003. 2003,
yeah. Hot dogs. They're famous for their hot dogs. And a lot of their,
processed
meats, a lot of hams and so on, And they had been around for a lot, but they're very premium brand. Very, very premium brand. And something ended up in the newspaper, as far as I remember, where somebody although they did tests in the factory for the meat and found high levels of, what was the thing? It's not fecal matter.
E. coli.
E. coli. And they shut the whole thing down. And we're talking about a premium brand. These things not supposed to happen to a premium brand. I was like walking into Coca-Cola and saying, you're making this stuff out of arsenic, shut down. It's just unheard of. And I think Erin Farms, they hired this guy. He used to do radio as well. He used to do. He ended up working in PR. He used to be an announcer on TV. Big guy, tall, dark-skinned fella. Baritone voice. He had a baritone voice.
Was it Nigel Augustus? I don't think so.
Yes, Nigel Augustus. Nice guy, really nice guy. He moved into PR. He moved into PR. And he came to he hired the agency because he needed somebody to do creative, to assist with the PR. He was going to go and do all of the newspaper routes and talk and do interviews and all that on behalf of his client. But he needed somebody to help repair the marketing, you see? Correct. So we met with him, and he had a very clear vision about what needed to be done. This is what we need to do. We need to repair the relationship consumers have with this company. And even though we say, it was just like a little piece of meat that had E. coli, wasn't that the big deal? The newspapers took it and ran with it and say the whole factory was full of E. coli and people were dying. That's not what happened. But he said we need to. Now, Erin Farms never advertised. Never advertised. They didn't need to. They were that big. They every Christmas you buy Erin Farm ham. It was one of those things, And these poor people didn't know what to do. And he had to come in there and he had to explain to them. And they were willing and ready and able to listen. You see, this is the thing. They listened to him. And he came to the agency and said, listen, we need to do photography of kids eating hot dogs. We need to do photography of people doing this. We need to do food photography of ham and stuff for Christmas because it happened just before Christmas. I think it was around this time, September,
Yeah.
October. And I was art directing all the shoots. I did all of the shoots. I did the photography with the hot dog and with the little boy and all that. And we shot
Right.
it at Softbox Studios. And we did this whole campaign. I can't remember what was the line, but David Aldred was the writer. And David and I came up with these great ideas for this campaign. And we were very, very successful. And once things were back to normal and everything was cool, Aaron Farm says, okay, thank you very much, we're gone. And that was the end of that. Aaron Farm never advertised after that. so
Not
David
only
Aldred
that,
was...
but
Mhm.
not only that, but they were able to withstand the negative publicity because of the fact that their reputation kind of outlasted all the negativity that was circulating around their product at the time.
Yeah.
They were able to, because like you said, it was almost as if it was too big to fail.
Yeah.
And they were too big to fail. They did not. They certainly thrived after that, actually,
Yeah.
and people forgot about it. In fact, I forgot that there was that brouhaha surrounding Aaron Farm until you brought it up, and
Yeah.
that again, that is a testimony to how popular the brand really is to this day.
Yeah.
People will talk about, when you say Tylenol, people always talk about Tylenol as an effective pain reliever.
Yeah.
But you could also say that Tylenol, when you think of Tylenol, you also think of what happened in the States back in 1982.
Yeah.
Because they took some of the capsules and it was laced with cyanide and people started dying.
Yeah.
There was in one particular area, it was in Chicago.
Yeah.
And so the makers of Tylenol, Johnson & Johnson, they said, look, we have to come up with a great PR campaign. We have to make, well, the most important thing that they needed to do was to make the product safer.
Yeah.
And that was when they decided that, okay, so that our consumers can take the product without dying, what we need to do is put a safety seal on the top of the mouth of the bottle, and then we have to make sure that when we put the lid on, we put a certain kind of protective coating around that, so that you can break the seal, open it, and everything is going to be fine and dandy. And this was very important. Instead of having it as capsules, because that's what they did in those days, Tylenol came in capsule form, like pretty much like Contact C. Oh God, I'm old. So what they did?
Yeah, I love the Contact C ad. The Contact C ad was something about the Contact C ad was very, very calming for me. With all the little drops where they opened it up and it was this macro shot of the loved it. Loved it.
Yeah, Contact C was the thing to have when you had a cold. You take that, and in 12 hours time, you're all right. You're good to go. I don't know what they put in that, but anyway. But so what they did was that they converted it. They didn't have it as capsules. They had it as caplets, so that they look like capsules, yes, but you can't just pull it apart like you used to. So they made it coated. They coated the caplets, had a nice gel covering and everything. So they made it virtually impossible to tamper the product in the first place.
Yeah.
And like I said, they spent millions upon millions of dollars to convince the public, because people were moving away from Tylenol because of what happened in Chicago. They said, look, and the frightening thing about it is, and I could be wrong, I don't think they ever caught the person who did it.
No, they never did.
They never did.
And I have a theory about that. I think,
you?
Yeah, you want to hear my theory?
I would.
My theory is it's a time traveler.
Oh my God! But that,
it's a time traveler.
Hold on.
It's a time traveler who came back to make it happen. It had to happen. It had to have happened. If not, okay, so if not, it had happened that time, it would have happened later. But it had to happen at that time.
Pardon me, but what was his modus operandi? Why? So my thing is, why specifically target that brand?
Well, it was a popular brand. It was a popular brand.
So what you're saying is, what the folks at Advil said, hey, we got to find a way to really undermine Tabloid. So would you do this for
No,
us?
no,
So
no, no,
sure,
no.
why
I don't think so. I think I think in the future, when
yeah,
they've developed time travel, there's a,
yeah.
well, you know, I don't know if you ever saw Time Cop with Jean-Claude Van Damme, right?
Never saw it, but I heard of it. Never
The
saw it.
idea is that you police time, so you know that this event has to happen. It's
Yeah.
the same thing like the guy who jumped out of the plane with all the money. What was his name?
Jimmy Cooper.
Right, DB Cooper. I mean, the theory is he's a time traveler. He had to he had to do it at that time because certain things had to happen after that. Certain events had to occur after that. You know that's what the theory is. You know, if you want to be conspiracy theory. But
Yeah.
I think that this guy who did it, the reason why they didn't find him is because he just went back to the future. All right, yeah,
You know,
okay. I'm putting on my foil hat, but all right, no problem.
no, but I mean, okay. Listen, if we're to talk about, can't believe it, we went from PR to advertising to time travel. This is gonna be
This is
this
how it
episode is
works
gonna be
here. This
this
is how it
episode is
works
gonna be
here.
this episode is just gonna be so freaking lit. Anyway, so I think
You know what would be awesome?
no, but
Oh yeah,
check.
yeah. Go on, go
Oh
on, go on,
yeah,
go on.
but they're saying right that we're talking about time travel, UFOs, and all that shit. People keep talking about aliens from other planets and stuff. My thing is, what if these beings, these alien beings, are not really aliens, but they are from another time? What if they're
Yeah.
us, but evolved? That
Maybe,
is a conspiracy theory right there.
maybe.
Suppose, supposing that when we see these beings with the extremely large heads and no irises or anything like that, no pupils or anything, people nothing like that at all. We've evolved into these creatures, and I don't know why they've come back though. That's the other thing.
Yeah,
What is the reason behind that? It could be that theory too. It
yeah,
could be that theory, but it's such a fascinating it's such a
yeah, yeah,
fascinating
yeah. It's fun.
think of.
It's fun to
But
think of
yeah,
these things, you know. But I mean, coming back to the PR advertising part of the conversation. The the fact is that this company, Aaron Farms, was willing to do what it took to get
yeah,
themselves back on the saddle, and they did
of
it.
course, yeah,
Now, the hope, any agency's hope, is that you would continue.
yeah,
You're riding this really good wave, and they're like, "Nah, we're fine, we're cool now," and then
yeah,
that's it. So David Aldred's vexation was, so what happen when somebody get food poisoning from their product? What are they gonna do? They're gonna just go and do this again. They have to maintain this level of trust but we don't work like that here.
no,
We
we don't.
don't work like that
Don't.
here.
If
I
you look at if you look sorry
Go on, no, go on.
if you look at any particular product, whether it is a retail product or even if something, even if it's a media product, it is based on that common bond of trust that exists between the manufacturer and the consumer.
Yeah.
Let me give an example of what I mean by that. There was a time when, especially in the late 80s and early 90s, the Trinidad Guardian, in terms of circulation and as a popular form of mass media, as a
Mm-hmm.
newspaper, it was on
Mm-hmm.
par with the Express. And this is like before Newsday materialized.
Mm-hmm.
Because back then you had, if you wanted to vie for newspaper readership, you had Express and then you had Guardian. As soon as you had Guardian, and then you had there were times when the Guardian would outsell, and the Guardian came up with an impressive ad campaign back then. Everybody reading the Guardian.
I remember that.
It might have been a broadsheet at the time. It wasn't a tabloid. It wasn't a tabloid form. It was broadsheet. But people were still reading the Guardian because it had a lot of interesting articles, had a lot of hard-hitting articles too, and they were very critical. And they were very critical of the administration. But when there was a change in government, everything had happened, and then you had the prime minister at the time, who had a problem with the way stories were being published, and it took a turn in the editorial concept of it, and then there were people within the higher ups that said, "Look, you know what? We quit," and a lot of people left, and then there was a changing of the guard, and the folks who ultimately owned the paper said, "No, we are going to let them. We accept their resignations, and we're just going to move on." And the people who stood behind. But what happened was, and I don't think they've ever fully recovered from it, what had happened then was that they lost that level of trust, and they could not ever get it back. No matter how hard they tried, they're still trying, but they just can't get it back. That's why the Express will still enjoy that, because people will say things about the Express and say, "Oh, you're being unfair, to this present administration, this and that thing."
Yeah.
That, again, that is to be expected. But by the same token, you see that same level of trust, even now, with what's going on in terms of alternative sources of media. Now you have social media. Now you have all sorts of things. Social media has pretty much supplanted traditional media now.
Yeah.
But even so, you still have that level of trust. And that is something that once you have that, it would be very unwise. It's important to not take that trust for granted.
Yeah.
And to not just say, well, this is how this is how we're going to do it, and we are not going to spend any major set of money because we have other fish to fry, and we're going to cut costs, and just leave it like that. But you do so at your own risk, and that is why the Guardian suffered as a publication. That's why. That's how I see it.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. It is trust, and it is. I mean, the newspapers have tried a lot of things now to keep their audience, but it's very difficult when you have people like Loop News and Wired 868 and all these other kind of small little online outfits. Well, Loop is not small. Loop is bankrolled by Digicel. So they're not small. They're big, huge organization.
Really.
But Loop exists in that space between sensational headlines and just run-of-the-mill generic type content. And at one point in the beginning, Loop was just taking what was being put in the Guardian and the Express, reformatting it slightly and putting it as one of their articles. So my brother Robert is like, look, they literally lifted this article from the Express and they put it in their thing and they call it, the writer will put a byline. It's like, wow. And that was years ago. That was years ago. They don't do that anymore because now they have this relationship with the papers where the people write their articles and they give it to Loop. So Loop is kind of like the online, the Loop doesn't have any character of its own. Let's put it that way. There's no, whereas the Guardian, you could say the Guardian has all of these things about it that like CNT3, Guardian, Express, they have a character. They kind of, even in Newsday, they who the readership is, who they're about, what they're about. Loop is just there, just a generic paper to sell ads. That's how I feel. That's how I see it.
What I miss the most about local media though is when you had anti-establishment papers like the Mirror and to a certain degree the Bomb In fact, when they had the bomb back in the 70s, they were extremely hard-hitting and they were extremely irreverent. But
My
more often
cousin
than
owned
not,
one of them. I think my cousin owned the bomb.
yeah,
Chocolingo.
that
Which one was Chocolingo?
Chocolingo, Patrick
Chocolingo was a
Chocolingo,
bomb?
Patrick
There was
Chocolingo's the
bomb
bomb.
blast. There was bomb blast punch and one of
Yeah,
them.
blast. There was heat, and then there was heat. But that,
Wow.
yeah, but
That
heat was
that
more.
didn't last too long.
No, neither did blast actually.
No.
Blast was a kind of paper that it was an offshoot of the bomb because there were people who left anyway the bomb newspaper to start the blast. So yeah, but back then they were hard hitting in terms of getting a story, and if you could read between the lines, you could actually gauge what was going on, and I think that element of surprise. I mean, you see it to a certain extent in Jack Warner's Sunshine publication,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's not the same thing because it
Yeah.
was really sensational, it was lurid, and it really made for vibrant press and everything.
Yeah.
But by I would say that by the late 2000s, the entire game had changed, especially as in relation to the press, the weekly press, and it became more of a mouthpiece for a particular administration. And when it wasn't anything like that at all, because it could not be bought, it could not be bribed. It was a newspaper that said, "I don't care who's in power, we are going to make you fart. We are going to make we're gonna really we're gonna come out we're coming after you. We don't give a shit."
Yeah.
And that is what I liked about them. But yeah, it's a pity though. It really is. It really is. But that's the kind of yeah. But that's the nature of the beast. That is how things. That's how things change. So. Yeah.
But that's not important right now.
That's not important right now.
I was looking through some of the magazine and some of the websites like Ad Age and so on to see if I found anything interesting. I haven't really seen anything interesting that is, caught my eye when it comes to the advertising world. Things have been rather quiet. There is this discussion about there's this Facebook page called TriniJobs.com, and somebody posted in the social media group that they posted memes and all kind of jokes and things now, and it doesn't seem like they thought the page was hacked. But somebody said, no, the page wasn't hacked. TriniJobs.com just kind of closed down. And the guy who's running the page, he just kind of just started posting, crap. so, but let me to think about all over a period of time, how many different people have done that, The first one to do it and try to make money from it was What Trouble Is This? I don't know if you remember What Trouble Is This?
Yeah.
What Trouble Is This was a bunch of guys, and they came into the agency once to try to pitch their idea of, well, we will push your brand or whatever. And it sounded like a good idea then, but it didn't really turn out to be a good idea. And then eventually, when they started pushing brands, people were like, yeah, you're not fun anymore, and you died. You kind of killed the momentum, killed yourself.
What I thought was interesting, and what I thought they should have done. What I thought, you remember the Late O'Clock News when they were trying to be more like the Daily Show?
Yeah, Late O'Clock News was a very brief flash in the pan, but again, yeah, same thing.
And the same thing, and you see, that's just it. It takes a lot of chutzpah, not just chutzpah, but a lot of capital to get things like that going.
Yeah.
And again, it depends too on the audience, because let's be honest. Let's be honest. Satire in Trinidad and Tobago is pretty much like expecting water from the Water and Sewage Authority, because half of Trinidad ain't gonna get it.
Yeah.
And again, this is not This is not meant to denigrate us as a people. These are just facts. We most of us can't grasp the concept of satire. We can't.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
that's true.
and the later clock news was trying to capitalize on that sort of thing, which is again, it's a shame because they were really funny. There were times when
Yeah.
they hit the spot, and they
Yeah.
said, "Yeah, this is something that we could work with." You
Yeah.
know, I wish we could find that kind of happy balance that we could get some hard hitting material, but at the same time we could find something that could also be very lucrative.
Yeah.
And again, it's not just saying, well, you are simply taking material right now, and the goal is not so much to awaken the conscience and things like that, but you are more interested in commerce as opposed to
Yeah.
awakening somebody's conscience.
Yeah.
And again, I have no problem with wanting to make money.
Yeah.
None.
Yeah.
If you are in this, the primary goal of any business is to make money.
Yeah.
I get it.
Absolutely.
The
Absolutely.
primary goal is to make as much freaking cash as possible. You have to be, and then you could say at the end of the day, hey, I'm richer than a pig in shit. I love that. Fantastic.
Yeah.
But
Give me
again,
some of that. Give me some of that.
give me some of that.
Give me some of
And
that.
this is a shameless plug. All you out there who are because we need
Mhm.
it.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's the thing. And again, you want that, but you also need to have that. You want to maintain a certain kind of integrity to your product, and you
Yeah.
want to be sure that once we cultivate that level of trust with your brand, once you are
Mhm.
able to do that, yeah, making money is pretty much like second nature. And you
Mhm.
could just say,
Mhm.
well, yeah, this is what we're going to do. So this is the case. We're going to come up with this. And what do you think about it? Yeah, okay, great. Let's run with it. Fine. And then
Mhm.
before you realize it, plunkety plonk, you're going to make like about $500,000 before the end of this particular, for the end of the week or the end of the month or something like that. And
Mhm.
that's how it's supposed to be. But
Mhm.
we know we're not living exactly in a perfect world when it comes to that. We're just not doing
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
We're just not doing that. Yeah. So it it
All
it,
right.
it, it is managing disasters. I think managing disasters are a lot more fun than just smooth sailing, because
Yeah.
it gives us the opportunity to see, well, okay, how do we flex our creative muscles and how do we come up with an idea that once we're through with it, we have somehow salvaged some degree of credibility with it. And I think once we can do, and the more creative that we are, and the more innovative that we are, I think we'll all be richer for it. Maybe not literally, but in terms of our integrity, I would say so.
Mhm. 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 Yeah. Cool. This is kind of
Yep.
just a easygoing kind of
No,
discussion.
this has been an easy. This has always been when we set out to do. The thing about it is, here's something weird. When we set out to do a show, more often than not, we have a kind of like an idea as to what we want to
Yeah.
say, and
Yeah.
then there are times when we just don't know what the ass we're going to say next. And today was one of those days, I think. But we were able. The beautiful thing about it is we were able to, to come up with 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 some coherent sentences, a couple of coherent sentences, and yeah, we were able to make some sense. Well, at least we hope we did. We
Yeah,
hope we did.
I think we talked quite well about um, important stuff. Um, the thing is, though, we really want to bring back in some of our friends, so we really need to
We
research a
need to
good
bring our
topic.
friends back.
Yeah, I would really
I
like
miss
what I would like to
Quincy
do is to bring back in. Yeah, we
and
need to bring back in Quincy and whatever. But what I want to do,
Quincy
I
and
really want to
Anthony and
do
those
face to
guys.
face. I want to do face to face first.
Yeah.
Try to get that out of the way because a lot of people like to watch us on YouTube. It's kind of
Why? Why the hell do they watch us? That's
people
sick.
like to watch us.
Nice.
People like to watch us.
What the hell do we watch us for? We're not going to do anything illegal or immoral or illicit. Hey, Mom! There are these two old guys talking crap. Oh, really?
Yeah.
You sure?
We talk a lot of crap.
Talk a lot of crap, but let me tell you, it's good crap as opposed to the kind of really stupid crap that certain politicians talk about. But again, that's not
not important right now. So what are we defining? What are we defining?
What are we defining?
This week.
PR. What's that?
It's bullshitting somebody into thinking that you've done something else. I don't know. What is PR, Jarrod?
Well, you're not too far off the mark. But
spinning the problem. Yeah,
PR is a kind of spin. It's a to forgive me for the crudity of my statement, but PR is the ability to take shit and turn it into sugar.
But that's not important right now. Thank you, Jarrod.
Thank you, Ian.
This one is an awesome thing. But next week, we'll definitely, barring storm or whatever, I think this storm is actually going to become a hurricane. Like when it passes us. Yeah. Another one. Because Ian, my namesake, started the same way. But it's still raining. I can't believe it. So, is it raining up by you?
No, it's not actually. It's windy. It's quite windy here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right, guys. So thank you for listening. Have a good week. I hope.
Have a good one.
I hope everything works out for you all this week, and please be safe. And was it that somebody says if you can't be good, be careful?
Be careful.
I'm not going to steal somebody else's tagline. So I'm just going to play the theme music now. Play the theme music.
Play the theme music, Ralph. Play it.
Bye, Jarrod. Bye, all. Have a good one.
Bye, Ian. Bye, all. Have a good one.